Welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Brian Tipper. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing here at Stilo, and I'm sitting alongside Helen St. Denis, our Conversion Services Manager. Today we're going to be talking about converting complex table structures to DITA XML. Let's go over some quick housekeeping rules before we begin. So everyone will be muted throughout the duration of the webinar. If you have any technical questions, please submit them via the Q&A panel. Allison, our marketing manager, will be handling all technical issues and general questions via the chat module. You could communicate with her by messaging the user named Stilo International. Next, this webinar will be recorded, and a link to this recording will be emailed to everybody that registered, and it'll be sent approximately 1 hour after the webinar concludes. And during the webinar, we're going to launch 3 polls. We ask that you please engage with these polls as they help guide the direction of the live demo. With that said, let's pop up the first poll right now. Okay, so I'm just going to give everybody like 15 seconds to quickly answer that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. I appreciate that. Okay, so let's jump to the first slide here. So let's start off with a quick intro to Stilo. So we're a technology company, and we've been in the structured content processing industry for around 30 years, during which time we've developed and brought to market specialist content processing tools, the initial one being a programming language called OmniMark. So this is a structured content processing tool which can be used for manipulating XML content, publishing it, and enriching it, and it also supports high-performance enterprise publishing applications. Next, we have AuthorBridge, which is our WYSIWYG web-based authoring tool. It was launched in 2017, and last year we just released version 3. Also last year, we introduced Optimizer, which is a tool to help analyze DITA content collections and identify reuse opportunities. It's ideally suited for optimizing content at time of conversion for deduping DITA topics and automatically updating DITA maps and conref libraries. And below, you'll see that we have a very diverse customer base. All of these organizations made a decision to use Migrate rather than outsourcing conversion services or taking projects in-house. And by doing so, they found themselves benefiting from improved turnaround times, reduced operating costs, and most importantly, they got complete control of their entire conversion process. Now let's focus on Migrate, the tool that we'll be demoing live in a couple of minutes. So Migrate is the world's first cloud content conversion service and has been under continual improvement for over 10 years. Migrate can be used to convert various source formats, FrameMaker, Word, RoboHelp, InDesign, HTML, XML, and although it's typically used for legacy content conversion, some customers are starting to use Migrate as an ongoing importer into their CCMS. And over these past years, we've helped our customers to convert more than 1 million pages of content to DITA. All of this content has been converted using Migrate, either by customers converting content in their own personal portal or by Stilo undertaking the conversion work for them. I'll quickly walk through the Migrate process before we ask Helen to demonstrate its capabilities. So the first step is to upload the document, in which Migrate can handle any number of files with any size. Once the documents are uploaded, Stilo will pre-configure a portal. It's good to note that whichever way Migrate is used, either a customer having their own portal or Stilo undertaking the conversion work for them, the Migrate portal is configured purely to meet each customer's requirements, making every portal unique for each customer, their content, and the DITA output that they're targeting. To do this, we use the uploaded documents to build out a rule set which targets the custom XML or DITA standard that's specified. After the portal is pre-configured, the next step is for Migrate to analyze the document. At this point, Migrate creates an intermediate XML format, and in doing so, Migrate is not just mapping styles, it's also processing any tables, handling equations, looking at conditional text, patterns, and context matching. The characteristics identified through the analysis are then annotated and mapped to the target data. Since Migrate works as a pay-as-you-use system, the analysis will also calculate the cost to convert each document using what we call conversion credits. Each conversion credit converts 1,000 characters, not including the white spaces. Once the user accepts the conversion charges, Migrate proceeds with converting the document. The conversion is schema driven, so it'll always generate valid data. Now, if the data output is not quite right, changes can be made in the rules editor, and then the document can be put back through and reconverted at no additional cost. So essentially, Migrate gives you the capability to guide your conversion to the required output, and you only pay once for each document. Now, when the when the conversion is completed, you can download the content to your desktop for QAing, or it can be integrated directly into your CCMS. In terms of producing DITA, we can get all sorts of granularity with DITA. We can produce DITA topics, specialized topics, and DITA maps. So what really sets Migrate apart from the traditional outsourced or in-house conversion solutions are the high levels of automation that can be achieved. With that said, it's now time to hand control over to Helen so that she can walk you through a live demo of Migrate. And while we're handing over control, I'm going to launch the second poll here. And if you guys could take a second to do that, and Helen, if you just want to grab control from me, that's all good.
Okay. Yeah, that would work if I could.
Okay, let me.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
Yep, and I'll just go ahead and close this poll. Okay, when you're ready, go for it.
Okay. Can you see anything of my screen yet?
Yeah, everything looks good on this end.
Okay. So before I go into showing Migrate, I want to show some examples of the sorts of table structures I'm talking about. When we engage with people to discover whether they would like to use Migrate to convert their content to DITA, one of the questions that comes up a lot is, what about tables? How do you handle tables? We have a lot of tables in our content, and we're very concerned that they should come out right. And one of the issues, of course, is that a lot of times tables will have column spanning and row spanning and so on. It can be tricky to get those to come out right if you're doing it manually, particularly. And we're very happy to be able to tell folks it's not a problem. If your table goes in with complex column spanning and row spanning, it's going to come out the same way on output. We just take the structure that's there and we reproduce it in the DITA, not a problem. So this first table that you see here is an example of a table with column spanning and row spanning. It's got a header row that's built into it. It also has a footnote. I just put the footnote in there. So we'll see that that gets handled automatically. When I first convert this, I'm going to do absolutely nothing to it. It's just going to come out the same way. The one thing I will do is this table, because it's Microsoft Word, there isn't really a table title, but we want this to become the title of the table. So we're going to mark that up to be the table title. Now, of course, it's all very well to say we're going to take what you give us and we're going to reproduce it exactly in the DITA. That's not always the right thing to do because a lot of times tables are used in inputs to just simply to lay things out, to present the information in a certain way. Those structures are presentational only and don't necessarily apply in DITA. So for example, the next example that I'm showing here, again, I took these tables I took them straight out of the automatic tables that you get from Microsoft Word. And this one I'm going to make into a definition list because that's the more appropriate structure in DITA. So we can take the tables and we can make them exactly the way they looked when you created them, or we can in fact enrich them and give you the correct DITA structures for them that enables you to get more of the benefits that you're hoping to achieve through DITA. So we're going to make this one into a definition list table. So this will be the term and this will be the definition. So we're going to go through and read this table row by row, left to right. Now, my next example is a little bit different. Here we have a table that is containing two tasks, essentially, two procedures, side by side. So if I were to strip out the table the same way as I did for the definition list, I'm going to end up with remove the old chain, install the new chain, and then this one step, and then the next step. And it's not going to be in the right order. So I'm going to need to convert this whole column into one task and this whole column into another task. So we have to read the table in a different way at that point. And here we have a note that's formatted as a table. This is very, very common, which is why I included it. It's fairly simple to deal with, but it is a very common structure that we see. And we're just going to create a note element from this table, strip out the table markup and create a note in its place. One other cool thing, quite often you will see that something that should be a table has actually been authored instead as a set of tab separated values. So in this case, this looks like it should be a table, but for whatever reason, perhaps people just didn't want the grid in there. It's been created just as paragraphs with tabs separating the parts. And this one's going to be the header and these are going to be the rows. We're actually going to make this one into a table. So whereas we can strip out tables and then create different markup, we can also do the opposite. We can create tables where none existed. One other thing, and I'm going to show a different document here. Quite often, this one is going to be a task, and it's going to show us how to fold a frog in origami. And what it's done, and this is a thing that you'll see pretty often, is we've got the steps over on the right-hand column, and we've got the interesting graphics that go with these steps over in the left-hand column. And again, if I read this table left to right, top to bottom, as I normally would, I'm going to end up with the pictures first and then the step. And then this step is going to contain the picture that really belongs to the next step. So what I actually want to do here is to flip the order of the columns. So I'm going to do that as well. So these are the first set of challenges that we're going to handle. Quickly, I'm going to show you the output that I got just from those conversions. So this is a PDF version of it, and I've just done the traditional standard default DITA Open Toolkit transformation. I haven't done anything fancy to it. So you can see our table has come out with a heading row, with the column spanning and row spanning intact, and there's our footnote automatically connected. And we do have a table title, and the DITA Open Toolkit has kindly given us a table number where none existed. And here's our definition list. It's formatted as if it were a table, as is quite often done in publishing DITA. but we'll look at the actual DITA. We'll see that it is in fact a list. And here's my side-by-side topics. So I've got them coming out now as 2 individual tasks with steps. Interestingly, in that table, I didn't number the steps automatically. So I had to remove the numbers, and the DITA Open Toolkit is generating numbering for me. So there's my 2 tasks. Here's my note. So we can see it's a note with its little icon. And there's my table that was created from tab separated values. Here's my origami frog. So you can see I've got a step, and I've got the image. It's going to be an info of the step, and it goes through all the way through, and it shows me how to fold an origami frog. Again, there were no actual numbers in my table when I started, but because I've made these steps, the DITA Open Toolkit has given me numbers, so I don't need to worry about that. So that's what it looks like in PDF. I would quickly like to show the DITA itself. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but here, for example, is the DITA for the first table that we looked at. So we can see we've got a table with a title, and we've got the column widths are coming in with the same widths as were specified in the input. So this is hard coded in. You'll see we've got the frame equals none here. Again, that's coming directly from the input. We're getting it out looking exactly, or as close as possible to exactly as it went in. We've got the alignment coming from the input, and so on and so forth. So as I say, I did absolutely nothing to this table when I converted it. I could go in and make some changes to make some of these attributes a little different if I want to. There's my definition list. It looks a little different, as you can see in XML, but you can see it's a definition list with a definition list head and entries and so on. And here's my other tasks with steps. There's my note. And there's my table from my tab separated info. And here's my steps from my table with the columns reversed. So that's what the DITA looks like. So now what's going to be interesting is for us just quickly to take a look at what we did to get that. I don't want to spend too much time on this process, but I would like to show you the kinds of things that we can do and the kinds of information that we can get from the input that enables us to do this. So first thing I'm going to do is these are the documents here that I've uploaded into Migrate. I'm going to open up the rules editor to show the first table that we looked at. Here we are. So this is where I can create and change my rules. So here's my table. You can see by this gray bar beside the table, this is an indication that I haven't put any rules on the table itself. This paragraph, as you can see, I have made a table title, and that's how it got into the table itself. So nothing was added here. This just comes out the way it went in. My definition list table. So here I have a rule that has applied to that. And what I've done is I've looked for, in this case, I've looked for the style of the table, because in this case, I know it's unique. I've looked for the table headers, which is often a really good way of identifying a definition list table. It will often say term and definition in the header, for example. Typically, these will be relatively predictable in people's content. So I can just use those to identify this as a definition list table. And then I've just annotated as a definition list table, and it all comes out great. Because this is a table header, it's going to come out as the heading of the definition list. If I didn't want that, I could remove that row. Now here's my side-by-side table. So if I click on all of this, I get my table here. And this is the rule that converted that one. So again, in this case, I've gone based on what identifies this table in this document. I've looked for a two-column table. So the column count is 2. So I always know how many rows and how many columns I have in any table. I've looked to see if it contains heading 1 in the first row, and it does. So if it's got a heading 1 and I know I'm going to make heading 1 into a topic title, I know I'm going to have to strip this table or remove the heading 1 to outside of the table, because I can't start a topic inside a table. So the first thing I'm going to do is strip the table. But I do want to make sure that I'm going to get it column by column. So I strip it column-wise. So once I've stripped the table, now I can mark this up as a heading of a topic, which I've done in a different rule, because this is the same heading 1 as is in my topic title rule. Then I can take these paragraphs and I can say, since I know that all of these are steps, anything that starts with a number is going to be a step. I'm going to make them all steps. And I'm actually going to strip out that number that I've typed in automatically, because these are not numbered, they're not generated numbers in the Word because we're in a table. So if they were generated, they'd all be number 1. So I'm stripping them all out, and I'm going to let the DITA Open Toolkit regenerate them. So I've done all of that in that one rule, and that's going to get that right. Similarly for the note table. So I've just looked for a table, and I've kept the style in there, but it probably doesn't matter. Really, all I need to know is that I've got one row table, and I've got the word note is the only content in the first column. I'm just going to delete that word note, and I'm going to create a note from that table. So that's that. And in this case, because I've got a header row as well as body rows in my table, I've got 2 rules. So I've looked to make sure that this is tab separated content, and I've looked to see that it is bold and 12 point, and that is enough in this case to identify it. And I've just said make this a table header, and this separator argument tells Migrate that the separator should be tabs, and that's where the columns are defined. And a similar thing here for the row, except these ones are not bold. So that's that. Now, if I did want to go in and make some changes to this, for example, I wasn't that crazy about the way that my table displayed. I noticed that I don't have a good framing going on here. I don't really like that. So I can, in fact, go in and make that, change that frame attribute to make it frame equals all. So what I'll do is I'll just change that single rule, or add that single rule. So I've selected the table, new rule. I'm just going to identify it by the style on this occasion, just because I happen to know that this is unique in this particular document. And I'm going to say set attribute. Oops. frame equals all. And I'm just going to also get rid of the hard column widths. I'm going to make them relative. So table attributes. So I'm just going to change that, save that. And I'm going to hit convert that one again. It'll only take a minute. And just very quickly, we're going to look at the rule for the froggy. So here's my frog table. You can see here it's going to have the image, and then it's going to have the step. But here's my table. Here's my rule. So I've selected the table. I've identified the table. So I've looked for a paragraph that's in the first column and contains only images. And so I'm going to just move that column. So move column from 1 until after 2. And then I'm going to put a step annotation on this column. So these are all going to be steps, and we'll get some numbering. And the images are going to be put after the steps, so they're going to come out in info. And that's how we did that. So okay. I'm going to look at my time and see how I'm doing here. But my first document is converted again already, so that's nice. I'm going to just download it. I'll extract that. And I'm just gonna, I'll only open up that particular topic that we were looking at. And if we look here, we'll see that we now have frame equals all, and our column widths are relative. And so now if I want to generate a new PDF for that, let's just do that. That should only take a minute. Although it always seems to take longer when you're on a webinar. There we go. So you can see now it does look, in fact, much nicer. It's got the frame around it properly, and the column widths are relative. That's not quite as obvious a difference, but you can certainly see that it's very, very easy to improve the appearance of your table using rules as well. Okay, so much for that. Now, I did save one example for the end. And this is something that we do occasionally see. With Word, for example, it is far too easy to create nested tables. And this is not necessarily a good thing. So DITA will not allow you to nest a table inside the entry of another table. So if you do this and you just convert it the way it is, you're going to have to end up with, within that entry, a paragraph, and inside the paragraph, the other table, and so on, which will give you valid DITA, but will probably cause your publishing environment to puke, because it's really not a good idea. So in this case, this is an example of the sort of things we've seen. So here's a table, and this is just formatting an entire topic. And then within this table, there's this other table. And then within that table, there's another table, another one here, another one here. So that's 3 layers of tables. And then I have another one here. And this is by no means the most deeply nested table that I've encountered either. But we have to figure out how we can take care of all these tables, give us the data that we want, and still be valid, usable data that can be published. So the first thing is this surrounding table isn't doing anything for us at all. We should be able to just get rid of that. Then what we have here is headings. So I think what we will do is we will make each of these a topic. So this will be the topic title. What's in the second column will be the content of that topic. In this first one, we've got a definition list. So we don't actually need this third table here either. In the second one, this actually looks like it's possibly an actual table. So maybe we can leave this table. The third one is essentially a task. So we've got steps here. So this will be the title, and then we can create steps from this table here. This column will be steps, and this column will be step results. And after that table, we do have a task result. And within those steps, we have our 4th level table, and this is a choice table. So this is fun, right? So, okay, so what we got from that, so here we have the terms used in this document. This is one topic. We have a definition list. We've got the parts required table. We've got some empty cells in there we could probably have deleted. And then we have our task. So we've got steps and a step result and a choice table here, the last step. And finally, we've got a task result. So all of this is now good data structures coming from that nested table. I will open up the let's have this one. Okay. So this is what the actual data looks like. So again, there's our definition list with the head. Again, if we decide we don't want the table head here to be a definition list head, if we just don't need that, we can delete that. And here we just have our list, our table, sorry, just a plain table. And here we have our task. So again, we've got steps, commands, and here's our choice table with choice table head. Oh yes, we do have the step result there, and we have the task result there. So again, let's quickly take a look at how we got that. Well, this even looks worse when you see it in the rules editor, doesn't it? So first thing we did was we strip out this table. Second thing we did, we're going to look at this inner table here. We're stripping this one out as well. So first one we stripped based on the fact it was simply one column, one row. This one we're saying it's got a paragraph of style heading 2, and in this case we said, okay, table grid. These are just the things that we know work for this document. For other people's content collections, obviously there would be different things that we would want to look for to make sure that we got the right things and only the right things when we're identifying these things. So now we've stripped the outer table, we've stripped this table, so now we know these are going to be topic headings because they are heading 2, and we have a rule that's making heading 2s into topic headings. So then within this topic is going to be what's in this table cell here. So again, we want to make this into a definition list. So we've done that. So we've just looked for term and definition, which is commonplace in a definition list table. It's pretty easy to say that's a definition list. This table, however, we're just going to leave it as a table. We didn't modify that at all. In the step table, it's entry. You see, as I click, I'm going to start again. I start with a small section of the content that gets selected. I've got a row. Now I've got the whole table. I'm going to look at that rule, see what I did. So I can see that I know it's a step table in this case because it has a column headed step and one headed result. I'm going to strip out that heading row because that has no place in an actual task. We don't need that. So I'm deleting that. I'm going to make these into steps. Any paragraph that's in the column where the heading is step becomes a step, and any paragraph that is in the column that's heading is result becomes a result. Then I have my choice table. So again, I've looked for the table headers, if and then. I haven't deleted these guys because I still want those. I want those to be my headings in my choice table. And that's how I get what I get. And then here I've got my task result. There we go. Yeah, so actually picking out the result of the task is a little bit more complicated because I have to make sure that my rule only matches that paragraph and not all the others. So I have to make sure it's not underneath this column and so on. But there it is. It's identified it, and we've got the content coming out the way we want it. And that's giving me this output. So that is really what I wanted to demonstrate. I will say just quickly about tables that look like this guy, not that guy. This guy. Page up. Nope, page up. Yeah, so in this case, we had the title that came before, and so that's easy to say that's a table title. We do see all kinds of things. So a couple of examples of other types of things we've seen is that sometimes we'll see the table title come after the table. Yes, we can make that into the title as well. It ends up at the beginning in the beginning part of the table where it should end up. We've also had people who will format their table so they put the title in the first row of the table. And then the row after that, they want to be the table head. Well, we can deal with that as well. We can identify all of these things through the rules and create the appropriate markup. Typically, people will have a way of doing things that will be at least reasonably consistent. Things will always look a certain way, and we can look at the things that create that appearance of how things are presented and use those factors to help us get the correct structure on the output. So that's it for the demo. So Brian, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. Thanks for the excellent demo. I'm gonna go ahead and launch the last poll while I switch over the screens. So if you guys could take a chance to answer that. And let me take the control back here. Okay, maybe I have to close the poll before I can share my screen here. Okay. Okay. Okay, I think everything's set up now. So just a quick reminder, Helen's going to be going through the questions that have been submitted, and if you guys have any additional questions, please submit them now. She'll look at them and answer them at the end of the webinar, which should just be in a couple of minutes. Now this last slide on Migrate outlines our engagement process. Basically, you go to our website, stilo.com/migrate, click the free conversion button and upload your sample content. We can then go ahead, analyze and convert the sample content, which of course is free of charge. We then schedule a demonstration date with you to jointly review the conversion results. And afterwards, we deliver the results to you for testing or evaluation purposes. And finally, if you decide whether or not you can decide whether or not you want to proceed with a self-serve or a Stilo operated portal. So yeah, the first 4 steps in this process can be completed in just a couple minutes of your time, and in return, we demo your converted sample content and deliver valid DITA to you. Moving on to our last slide. So to conclude this webinar, I'd like to mention that we'll be exhibiting at DITA North America in April. We'll also have a couple presentations there. Helen will run a technology test kitchen on April 27th at 2:50 p.m. titled "Two Wrongs Don't Make a Right, Learn the Value of Property Duplication." This will be using our optimizer tool. And I'll be presenting a light bulb talk on April 29th at 9:50 a.m. titled "Tips and Techniques for Handling Graphics When Transitioning to DITA," which will be using our Migrate software. Okay, now it's time to answer your questions, and I'll just give Helen a couple more seconds to read through some of the questions there. And I'll also mention that if for some reason we didn't have a chance to answer your question, or if you like to keep your question confidential, feel free to email it to contact@stilo.com. With that said, I'll pass the mic back to you, Helen, to finish up with some questions.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So we do have a couple of questions. So first question, can we make the call width dynamic? Yes, so I did show how to make it relative, but we can actually, I mean, you still saw the numbers in there. We can actually configure it so that it will make the call width just that star. So it will be, it won't be fixed at all. So yes. Okay, let's see. If I had a 1,000-page manual with many of the same table types you listed, would I have to individually apply the various rules to each of the tables in the document, or can some level of intelligence be applied? Excellent question. Yes, we try to create rules that will work across the board. In almost all cases. So what we try to do when we get you set up either with a portal to work yourself, or if we're going to do the conversion for you, we try to get some samples of these things so that you have many of these tables. We try to figure out what they do have in common so that once I create a rule for a certain type of table, it's going to match correctly on the rest of that sort of table. So by and large, we should be able to get this, that it will always work. So if you've got step action tables, we should be able to get all of those with our rules. I could show one thing, Brian, if I can have back the screen again for a minute.
Yep, 1 second here.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, it's all yours.
Thanks. Okay, so one of the things that I can actually do, if I've got all these rules and they are working really, really well, and I've got this one annoying thing that won't quite come out the way I want it to because for some reason there's something different about it, I have the option. I can add something right in the rules editor. I can add a property, and I can say, if I want to strip this table, I can make a property called strip. I can add that. Then I can make a rule that says anything that has a property strip, apply this rule. So it's a quick way of making up any deficiencies that we may be too complex to get with a rule. If we've got just one exception, we can easily go in and change that right in the rules editor. It's very, very straightforward. Though, as I say, we have enough information that we can get in terms of what things look like, where they're positioned in tables and so on, that generally speaking, we can get the rules to apply across the board. So, okay, I'll give it back to you, Brian. And let me see what the next question is.
You can keep it till the questions are done. That's fine.
Okay. Also, how does Stilo determine when to create separate topics, concept versus task for a single Word document? So what we typically do is, again, and we will always consult with the customer because people have different requirements, but in a Word document, we can usually go through and look at the headings. So heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, so on. We will start typically a new topic at the heading level. And then we can nest them in the map according to the heading levels as well. Migrate is pretty good at figuring out the difference between a concept and a task based on if there are steps. So if we are able to say with rules, these things are steps, Migrate will know to make a task. We can also set it up so that it's reasonably good at getting references in certain circumstances. References to concepts are a little trickier to detect automatically. But again, people's documents tend to be structured in a way that's similar, so we tend to be able to get that to a large extent as well. But it is all within the user control. So if you want topics at heading 1 and heading 2, but not at heading 3. Well, that's no problem. We just make headings at topics at heading 1 and heading 2. Maybe heading 3 becomes a section title, and so on. So it is all very configurable. What kind of conversion preparation is required for these complex tables? When the sources are not consistent, the styles in the source are not consistent. So again, you know, I'd love to see these so that we could actually see what we can find that is similar across the board. But it just needs to be something that we can pick on to say, this kind of table needs to be treated in this way. So if there is a certain words that we can expect to appear in certain places, certain codes or certain anything that we can pick on and say, all of these tables are going to have this thing in them. We should be able to get those right the first time. If those don't exist, then it might become useful to put something in there, put even just some small piece of text that we can use to identify them. We can then delete that text from the DITA when we convert. So it should be a very small amount of pre-conversion prep that's required. We try to automate things to the extent possible where we try to reduce the amount of pre-conversion and post-conversion work that needs to be done as much as we can. Let's see. We have both Word and frame files. It isn't allowing us to select multiple options. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what that's referring to. Obviously, we can process Word and frame files. They do need each of them needs their own importer, because the way that Migrate works is we take the input format and then we convert it to an intermediate XML, as Brian was explaining at the beginning of the webinar. And so it's the process to get them to that intermediate XML is slightly different, because we have to read the OpenOffice XML in the Word, and then we have to read the MIF file in the FrameMaker and so on. So those parts are slightly different. They need different importers, but from that point, the process is the same. So yes, you can have Word, you can have FrameMaker. They have to be uploaded individually. There's all sorts of other formats that we can convert as well. RoboHelp, any of the HTML-based things, DocBook even, InDesign, AuthorIt, all sorts of things. So I'm not sure if that really answered the question. So if there's more to it, send us an email and we'll see if I can answer it better. What about top secret content? Can we install a local system on premise? Yes, we can. Would be a big conversation about the security and how we would maintain it and provide you with updates and so on. But yes, we can, and we have done on-premise installations. Let me see if there's any other questions here. I think that's it.
Okay, perfect. Well, that concludes our webinar. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and we hope to speak with you all soon. And goodbye for now.